Hello all you glorious people of the internet, I hope you're all doing amazing. Today we're going to do a little bit of cosmetic work to the interior of the Drift Calais that we've got. Let me show you what we're doing. So today marks 6 weeks since we touched this car last. The last time we touched this was at DriftX. That gives you an indication of when I'm filming this video, because I have no idea when I'll end up releasing it. Actually, I have touched the car about a week or so after DriftX. I did put a DFI module in this because it did break down on the second day at DriftX, for all of you that haven't seen that video. So I have put a DFI module in it and the thing is back up and running and it's running amazing. So that's good. The car is still filthy from DriftX as well. I haven't cleaned it, but that's not important. So today we're going to work on the interior of the car, doing a couple of improvements and tidying up. I did mention in the DriftX video that I had recently changed the steering wheel. So this thing had like a hard plastic $99 Autobahn special steering wheel on it. And we've gone to a suede style one now. So a lot better to feel, more grip on the steering wheel as well, and just makes it a lot nicer to drive. But what we're gonna do, the center console area on this thing is all kinds of wrong. So we've got an auto console that I've cable tied a shifter boot into, which the shifter boot is now torn. The console is all broken into several pieces. We've got our Speco volts and oil pressure gauges down here, and just everything is sort of like all over the place. So first thing I'm going to do is I've got a factory manual VY that I use for parts. I don't know if you've seen that car yet or not. So I've went and got the center console trim out of that. It has been painted black, but I'm going to try and paint it back to a color that's sort of similar to this finish, if I can find something. Also, I've got a brand new shifter boot, so I've got to find a way of retaining that to this. It's supposed to have a frame that goes in and mounts it to the back of the console, but we might just glue it in or something. Being a factory manual console, it's going to put the traction control button in a neater spot with this trim, rather than it sort of looking like that, or cut out. So that's going to be neater as well, but we will need to cut this out to make room for the hydraulic handbrake as well. So we'll have to figure out what we're going to do with that, how we're going to mark it out and cut it out. It shouldn't be too hard. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to move these gauges. So we've got our oil pressure and volts, and we're going to move them to up on top of the dash. So I've got a dual gauge sort of gauge pod that goes into the top of the dash here. So we're basically going to delete this sort of frame thing and move the gauges up here. So when I'm on track, that way, especially oil pressure is essential to monitor, especially when you're sideways. I can just literally look across and just check it. Don't have to take my eyes off the road, rather than sort of going like that type scenario. So first things first, I think we're going to work on this trim, get it cut out and get the boot mounted to it to get that done how it needs to be. And then we'll work on pulling all of this out. Sweet, got the old center console trim out. So gauge is just sort of chilling there for now. I'll probably take the side panel off and feed all the wiring out of the side for that, and we'll finish all in here first before we get onto the gauges. There's how the old console came out, goes to show how broken it is. And I've painted and modified the other one. It's just over here drying. I actually painted it with trailer paint. Found that color wasn't too dissimilar, so I've cut it out as much as we need to. So we'll let that dry, and then we'll go about mounting the boot into it and installing that. So using a combination of windscreen Sikaflex, super glue, and the wife's laundry pegs, I've glued the boot into the back of the console. But I'm just going to let this sit overnight and dry, and then we'll pick this up tomorrow or another day when we have time. Morning, just thought I'd come out quickly before I head off for work for the day and just do a couple of little things. So first and foremost, I've run the wires up to the top here for the gauges. So we'll clean all that up and put new connectors and stuff on it when we get a bit more time. I've put all this stuff back together, put this bottom trim back on, and I've put the console in. And I'm pretty happy with how that looks, to be honest. Nice looking new boot in there and all that stuff, and it all does what it needs to do. looking very good. So got this area is looking better with the traction control button as well, with having the proper trim, so that all looks nice and cool. The reservoir for the hydraulic handbrake now screws to the console underneath this trim, whereas before it screwed to the top, so that looks neater as well, nice and secure. And the hardline as well goes underneath this trim rather than running across the top like it did before as well. So just sort of rerouted that a little bit. So yeah, all happy with that. I've got a spare little rubber trim thing that sits in here, so I'll grab that and throw that in too, just for the fun of it. So that's about it for now. I'll pick this back up in a few days or when I've got a bit more time to finish this. Rightio, this thing is all together and ready to go back in the car. I've simplified the wiring a little bit on the back. It's still messy because it's rushed, but it's what it is. We've basically got black for negative, red for switchable accessory power, whites are illumination, and green is our signal from our oil pressure switch. And had a little bit of a win. I was up at my storage locker the other day and I found a brand new autometer volts gauge. So next to the Speco one, they don't look too dissimilar. There was nothing wrong with the Speco volts gauge, but it did look a bit different to the Speco one. So I don't know, it sort of looks a bit closer now. Plus I like autometer, they're good quality stuff. So anyway, our boost gauge is a autometer boost gauge. So now we've got volts as well, and maybe one day if I'm feeling rich, I might change that to an autometer, but it's working fine for now. Anyway, let's throw this in the car and get it wired up and see if it all works. Sweet as, it's all in, all installed and looking heaps neater, better than it being down there, that's for sure. Really easy to just look across and look at it now. So yeah, happy with that. All that's left now is to test it. So we'll start with illumination. Yep, that works. Now you'll notice this is green backlight and this is white. Autometer gauges run a T10 globe, so like a Parker globe or a number plate style globe. So I did put a green LED one in the autometer one, whereas these run a really small globe that have the wires soldered on straight onto the globe, so I wasn't able to change that to a green. But I have changed the illumination in my boost gauge to a green LED as well to match. So both of these have green illumination and the Speco is clear. That is going to mess with my OCD massively, but one day if I end up changing that to an autometer, we'll fix that. So we'll see if it works. I do one day definitely want to change that to an autometer gauge, because from memory, if I flick the ignition on, yeah, this thing reads about 25-30 psi of oil pressure without the engine even on. So what I would normally do is just deduct about 30 psi off the reading, because this thing does read like it's got stupid oil pressure. Yeah, so that's working. So it's showing about 75 psi of oil pressure at idle, which I know is not accurate. It's probably more about 45, but good thing is that it works and it gives me some form of oil pressure reading. Volt gauge works and looks good. Obviously the boost gauge is untouched. So sweet as, happy with all that. Bit of a quick video guys, but I hope you enjoyed it. Just wrapping up, tidying up and cleaning up a few things on the inside of the old Drift Calais. Definitely looking a little bit better in there. So should be better, I guess. If you want to see more content like this, please remember to like and subscribe. And until I see you in the next video, as always, be good to yourselves and each other.